I've lost track of the amount of times I've seen somebody say, please convince me that I don't need to buy a Thor. And so this is a public service announcement. You don't need to buy a Thor. Except you absolutely do need to buy a Thor. This thing is fantastic. I've had it for 4 months now, and almost every single day I've picked this up and played it. And that's the most used handheld that I've ever had. Now, I say almost every day because I have had a period of a few weeks where I've put this to one side so that I could test the 477M for my review. But even then, I did find myself sneaking a bit of time with the Thor on occasion like a guilty lover in the midst of an affair. But I did promise that I'd make more Thor videos. I mean, I didn't promise it would be timely. I'm a YouTuber, not a train conductor. But every time I come up with an idea for a video, somebody else seems to have come up with the exact same idea, and they've done it before. It's like I've tapped into the collective consciousness of the internet, only to find that my brain is sinking to the cloud too slowly. So this video is off the back of seeing a lot of people publish their either 3-month or 4-month reviews of the Thor. And that really illustrates just how popular this device has been and how much conversation we've had about this thing already. I've watched people who don't own the device have louder opinions about it than people who do. I've read comparison threads between the Thor and devices that haven't even shipped yet, written with all of the confidence of somebody reviewing a restaurant based entirely on their seating arrangements. And I've read forum threads so long and so circular that I'm fairly sure they've achieved sentience and are now arguing with themselves. I've been introduced to a lot of new concepts as well. I mean, before this started, I thought that Hinge issues was somebody who had a problem with online dating. But we're also at a very interesting time for the unit. Batch 3 is shipping. Batch 4 pre-orders are about to go on sale or have done already. I could never really keep up with these things. And then just when the community was starting to settle into a comfortable rhythm of arguing about triggers and screen tearing, right when everybody had almost talked themselves into buying one, AYN dropped a price increase. And the internet went mad. Those new prices came into effect on March the 8th, and they've got a lot of people wondering whether or not the Thor is still a good deal at those price points. And looking back on this, dispassionately, I'm wondering whether if I knew then what I know now, I would have made the same buying choices. I bought the Pro model. Might I have bought a different model? May I have made a different choice if I was buying the unit today? Because now I've had the experience of playing this in bed and on trains and in waiting rooms and during a particularly boring funeral. Don't do that, by the way, because the last thing that anybody wants to hear when the priest says, we commit his body to the earth, is,
I salute my fallen enemy!
But I've played in all of those places and I've got opinions, and some of those opinions might annoy you, because that's what the internet runs on, isn't it? Drama. And Cloudflare. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? I mean, you don't click on a video at this point to hear the same old thing that you've heard 3 months ago. So in this video, I'm going to be covering all of those new things that you probably heard 3 months ago. Let's have an intro. I didn't think I'd have to answer this question again. It seems like a no-brainer to assume that you can play DS and 3DS games on the Thor and have a pretty damn good time doing it. But somebody commented on my original Thor video recently saying that they wanted to wait to buy this for a few years because the lag on the Thor was 25 frames, but the lag on original hardware was only 14. But the map is not the territory. And those figures don't actually give you any indication of what it's actually like to really play this thing. 4 months ago, the software was new. Everything felt like it was held together with string and sticky tape. You were afraid to install updates in case you sneezed and blew one of the knots loose, but it held together. You had to download certain particular emulators because no one actually had that native dual screen support. But that's far from the truth now, and it's amazing to see how quickly emulation developers have caught up with this trend, delivering a proper dual-screen experience and solid performance updates. And the front ends, well, the front ends are the same. The Thor has been at the forefront of a massive change in front-end design. Now, you can't get hold of a front end that doesn't either have dual screen support out of the box or a companion app that'll do it for you. For me, I wanted a single screen launcher. What can I say? I'm a single screen traditionalist in a foldable world. I really like having ESDE on the top screen and then having Android on the bottom. Incidentally, using the phrase Android on the bottom might mean that you now have to take a picture of yourself to verify your age. This age verification thing is getting absolutely crazy. I'm half expecting a new system that's going to tell you it's very simple and all you've got to do is cut your arm off and then count the rings. But I don't wear any rings, so I don't know how that's going to work. But we have a level of support now with the Thor that we didn't quite have 4 months ago. And that is an incredible thing. And along with that, we've got all of these benefits of emulation. We've got save states and fast forwards and rewinds. Some people might consider that cheating, but I consider it insurance. It's insurance against the telephone ringing or the doorbell or my mum falling over and me having to rush to her aid. Look, I'm an adult. I've got adult responsibilities. I need a system that respects my time, and that's exactly what emulation does. And that's even before we get on to shaders or overlays or upscaling. You've got 2 beautiful OLED screens in case one of them goes wrong. You've got richer colours, deeper blacks, and when you're running a 3DS game way beyond the native resolution, you start seeing details that the original 240p screens just couldn't resolve. And then you get HD texture packs, works of art that communities have poured hours into. And the Thor has the power to run these packs at full resolution without breaking a sweat. Zoo over at Retro Handhelds has recently done a brilliant video, which I'll link to below, where he showed off the Amateur Awakening HD texture pack, and the difference is staggering. It's like getting an HD collection of a game without all of the changes that the studio insists on making. I mean, I can't be the only person who remembers Warcraft 3 Reforged, which removed key features of the game, broke existing campaigns, and even locked players out of the original game entirely. It couldn't have been any worse if he'd walked into a room and found it in bed with your girlfriend. But you don't have that here. You've got beautiful, lovingly crafted game assets that make me want to pick this device up even more. It's not perfect, of course, and we should be honest about the trade-offs that you're going to have to make. The touchscreen is capacitive, not resistive. Now, I wanted to make a joke here about resistive is useless, but I don't want to press my luck. Really what this means is that fine touch input feels slightly different. It does work, and if you're coming to these games for the very first time, you probably won't notice much. But if you've played thousands of hours of Phantom Hourglass, you will. The thing is, this is a trade-off more than a deal-breaker. Phantom Hourglass is still infinitely playable. The other major trade-off is the screen size. Some people complain that the bottom screen isn't perfect integer scaling for a DS screen, and personally, I don't care. I don't find it a problem. I chose the black unit specifically because of this, and it means that any bezels just fade into the body of the device. Much like playing DS games on a 2DS or 3DS, you can match the screen sizes and you can have custom layouts just for those particular games. So games like Sonic Rush or Contra will work. But that does mean that you're leaving a lot of screen real estate around the edges. Really, this is the only thing that feels like a compromise. And on games where the screens don't have to match, you get lovely large images. One thing I mentioned in my original review is that rhythm games are not the best on this console. But there is a bit of a fix to that I didn't know about at the time. When you first install any of the DS emulators, you should go into the audio settings and then change the latency to low. It's a quick fix, but it tightens up the audio sync dramatically. And once you've done that, rhythm games become really playable. I've been playing through Rhythm Heaven recently. Look, I hate Rhythm Heaven, but I needed to test it for this video. But I can play to the beat now, rather than before where I was having to watch the screen all the time. And it turns out I'm a lot better at it now. But that's possibly because I've been banging the drum about the Thor for 4 months. But that brings me back to the 25 frames of latency over the 14 frames on the original hardware. See, it sounds like a lot, but in reality, it just doesn't matter. Those figures are taken from a 200 frame per second camera, so the real-world difference is about 46 milliseconds. It's very difficult to have a frame of reference when you're talking about things like milliseconds, because we don't usually experience them, they're so quick. But it's roughly the same time that it would take you to do 1/5 of an eye blink. That's how fast it is. It is such a short amount of time that even owners who are describing themselves as sensitive to input lag say that they just don't notice it. It's not that it isn't there, it's just that it doesn't affect you when you play. One of the issues that people have brought up over the last few months is the sound. The speakers are tinnier than a cheap harmonica in a biscuit tin. Okay, perhaps I'm exaggerating a little bit there. They're not that bad, but there is too much high end on them and a lot of people don't like it. The community rallied around a solution called James DSP, which I originally thought was the sequel to Sequest DSV, but apparently not. This is a system-wide audio processing app that applies EQ curves and enhancements to everything that comes out of the device. And the results people were getting with it are actually pretty impressive. But I don't use it. See, I'm just not a fan of having persistent background services running all the time. And the stock audio hasn't bothered me enough to accept that trade-off. In a recent update, AYN have added a custom EQ to the Thor's system software. It's a better approach, it's more elegant in some ways, but people who've tested out both have said that the AYN EQ doesn't really replicate what James DSP does. The problem with the stock solution is that there's no makeup gain. And no, makeup gain isn't how much prettier a woman looks with lipstick. See, look, the moment you start cutting EQ frequencies, the overall volume will drop to compensate, and there is no way to change that. To make up the loss, if you see what I mean. Traditionally, you'd use this thing called makeup gain, you just turn it up. But I've finally set my own custom curve now, and I'm going to share that with you today. Whether you like it, it's going to be a very personal thing, of course, so I won't promise miracles. Anyway, here's mine, and if you want to copy it, I'll leave the settings in the description. My first Thor video left some questions. I couldn't speak to long-term Hinge durability, what the battery's like on day-to-day usage, or the novelty and whether it outlasts the return window. Clearly, the novelty has not worn off, and the Hinge is fine. There was real panic about this. I can understand why, because the Retroid Pocket Flip 2 had really bad Hinge problems. A lot of people suffered with it. But we haven't seen the same widespread issues with this yet. Some units did have cracks, but the actual failure rate appears to be super low. So I'm a lot more confident about this than I was, and I was quite optimistic beforehand. Burn-in hasn't appeared. It's still probably a little bit too early to tell whether or not that's going to be an issue. There have been some units with some image retention. Mine doesn't seem to suffer from it too much, or at all, really. But I have seen photos and videos of other people, and they really do. It's a real, genuine problem, and AYN have tried to solve this by having a large line of static move up and down the screen. It looks like some sort of ghost hunting app gone wrong, but I think it means that because the screen is exercising, I don't have to. Is that right? I mean, it's a sensible thing to do, but it's also bloody annoying. You're much more likely to come across this when you're trying to set stuff up and you're kind of waiting to make a change and you're not quite sure what to do. And that is exactly when you don't want to be distracted by an animated zebra crossing. To be honest, I'm a bit disappointed about this. I thought that AYN would have come up with a much more elegant solution. By and large, the fears that people had around this unit just haven't come to pass. And you've got something here which is solidly built, feels premium, and delivers on the promises that it makes. There is, however, one issue that people need to be aware of, and that is the triggers. We're not going to get bogged down into ergonomics. I'm convinced that the science of ergonomics exists solely to make astrology look respectable. But in recent weeks, people have been noticing that the springs on the triggers haven't been quite springing as much as they used to. Some people have reported that their triggers were feeling mushy, or they didn't spring back properly. And a few have found that the actual springs in the triggers have snapped completely. Now, repairing this is actually fairly simple, but you do have to open the device, and that's going to put some people off. The springs themselves cost very little. But to me, this is why this issue is so disappointing. I mean, every other company in the world who's made a hinged device has hinge issues. These sorts of springs, however, are in everything from analog triggers to, all sorts of technology. It's a standard thing. It's well known, and it's been repeated time and time again for decades at this point. This should not be an issue. It shouldn't be a point of failure. Now, we don't have enough long-term information at this point to know whether or not this is a serious issue affecting everybody or a problem with a small batch. Right now, I wouldn't let this stop you from buying one because they are really cheap to replace and simple to repair, like I said. But where does this leave us? Well, none of these things seem to be overall deal breakers, but I do have a bit of a confession to make. I was probably wrong about the Pro in hindsight, at least in my first few videos about this. I said the Pro was basically the model that most people should get. It's the best balance of price to performance. It's got a good amount of RAM, but you're not paying for extra stuff that you don't need. Some people pushed back and said they wanted to get the Max because they wanted the extra storage and they wouldn't need to get an SD card. And you know what? That's fair enough. And I did leave a few caveats in that video as well about using Switch emulation and PC emulation if you want to push HD texture packs and things like that. But over the last couple of months, the maths has changed dramatically, and that's because of the RAM-pocalypse. And whilst that sounds like a film by Wes Craven where killer sheep steal all of your dreams, what it meant in practical terms is that for $90 you can get a Thor with a whole terabyte of storage. I went onto the US Amazon today and I searched for an Amazon Basics 1TB micro SD card, and it cost $175. Many brands make like work. That's not right. Many brands cost much more. Even then, taking into account the new pricing, if you're going for a Thor at the moment, it makes much more sense to consider the Max version over everything else. But I didn't have to deal with that. My purchase of the Pro with a 1TB Samsung Evo Plus SD card has been perfect. I never feel like I'm running out of RAM. I don't do PC gaming on this anyway, so it's not really a problem. And I've got plenty of space to put any games that I want on there, with a bit of switching around when I finish one and want to start something new. If I really wanted to push this into PC emulation, then Game Native now allows you to store games on your SD card, which isn't going to be as fast as your internal storage, but for some of the lighter games this isn't going to matter one bit. And I know this firsthand because when I was using Winlator on the portal, I stored everything on my SD card. So 4 months later, I can tell you that whilst I was right to buy what I did at the time, now I wouldn't. Now I would recommend the Max. But should you buy the Thor anyway with this new pricing? Does it still make as much financial sense? I think it does, because beyond the specs and the few problems which there are but you may never actually run into, this has given me so much joy over the last 4 months, and I keep coming back to it even when I should be doing something else. And it's not as though there's a queue of alternatives waiting to take its place. The AYN Neo Pocket DS costs a lot more, weighs a lot more, and has a customer service reputation that makes the queue at the DMV look responsive. The Ambernic RGDS I think it's a lovely device. No, don't laugh. I actually quite like it for what it is, but it's playing in a completely different league. Comparing it to the Thor is like comparing a bicycle to a fighter jet. They'll both get you there, but one of them's going to do it at Mach 2. And if you're looking at the original hardware, a decent new 3DS XL will cost you north of $250 at the moment, and that has dim screens and aging batteries and an ever-persistent risk that you'll be buying somebody else's problems. With the Thor, if you're only interested in playing DS and below, you could pick up the Lite model, pay the same price and have modern hardware to play your games on. So it might seem a bit churlish then to say go for the Max at nearly twice the price, but look at what you're getting for that. You're getting a much more powerful Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. You're getting 16 gig of RAM, a benefit only if you want to play Game Hub, but a benefit in those instances. And you're getting a whole terabyte of storage, which, let's not forget, is worth about $175 right now. But for now, I think that's it for this video. There's still more to say about this, but I'll leave that till another time. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you can see that actually living with this device has been pretty close to what I expected it to be in the first place when I put my pre-order in back in October. But are you getting one? Please let me know in the comments below. Have you got one already? Are you waiting for yours? Are you in batch 3 or batch 4? Are you in batch 2 and it just hasn't arrived yet? Are you considering, because of the new pricing, maybe you're going to hold off for a bit? Or maybe because of the new pricing, you're going to go full steam ahead in case they make it even more expensive later on. Do let me know in the comments, and whilst you're down there, leave a like and leave a subscribe and leave something of the happiness you bring. Happy gaming.